Hey everyone, it is Thursday, and that means in our expert series, we bring back Jonathan Twomley. And as you will see, Jonathan is out and about in New York City. How you doing, sir?
I'm really good this morning, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great. Looks like you have some pretty good weather behind you. I see a little
Oh
blue sky.
man. Oh, it is gorgeous out here today. This is like the, there are just in New York City in spring and fall, you can just get some like spectacularly beautiful days. And today's one of them. And blue sky, not a cloud to be seen. And plus with all the, the reduced traffic, it means the skies are even bluer than usual. So it's really nice out here.
Well, very, very cool. Well, be safe. Don't do anything silly. Be safe. We need
Yeah,
you every week.
yeah, I've got my mask here, so I'm sitting in a park near my house. There's not a soul within 100 feet of me, so I'm okay. But as soon as I start walking around again, I'll put the mask back on.
Good for you. We do the same thing here. When we leave, we put on the masks as well, just so we don't make anybody else nervous. That's just the right thing to do. So, pretty
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
So Thursday, which it just means we need to talk about the unemployment number. It came out today. New claims of 3.169. So, trending lower. I think last week was 3.8, which again is like the fourth week in a row down, but still 6x the worst month we've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you have to kind of put this in context. Usually that jobless number is moving, like the overall number, it may be moving up because you've got more jobless claims than hires, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why unemployment goes up, because there's still always hiring going on, except for right now. I think there's almost no hiring going on right now. So that number is just, almost all the net number is probably pretty close to that jobless claims number. And I think, it's lower, but it just means that we're running out of people to lay off. Right?
Exactly.
Or people have finally gotten around after a couple of weeks to filing their claims or what have you. So I don't see this as like good news necessarily, in the sense of it's starting to trend downward. I think when things start opening up and people go back to work, that's going to tell us the real story, right? Like,
yeah, absorption.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people will go back to work, but I mean, if you're looking at say for instance, Texas has opened up ahead of a lot of other states, but they're only allowing restaurants to operate at 25% capacity.
Yeah.
So that means, for some restaurants, it means it's not even worth opening.
Yes.
And because that's like a money losing proposition for them to open at 25% capacity. But it also means they're only hiring back 25% of their staff. So and you're going to see that kind of like throughout the economy until there's really an all clear, or, what I'm hoping for is that COVID will wind up being like the flu, where it basically goes away during the summertime, and at least we can get back to some kind of normality for a few months before, hopefully we won't have a second wave. But if we do, when it comes, we'll be better prepared for it and maybe able to kind of not be so drastic in how much we've closed stuff. But I don't know, I still think we're in for a long haul. I think people who are getting really excited about states opening up, I think are being a little overly optimistic, because nobody's just saying like, yeah, just go back to normal and do whatever you want. They're opening with all kinds of restrictions, which are probably necessary to prevent big spikes from coming back. So
it's the big numbers tomorrow, right? Tomorrow's the unemployment for April, and what I have on my channel is an over under of 16.8%. Do you have any thoughts on whether you would take the over or the under on that?
On 16.8%, I think I would take the over.
Yeah,
I
think most people are on the over. All right, well that will be interesting. We're a multifamily kind of discussion today, so why don't we talk about rent collection? And just so you know, I'm running about 10% ahead of my April collections, which turned out to be about 97 or 97.5%. So I don't know what you're hearing across the board, but knock on wood, thus far May's frankly better than April.
Yeah, I mean, so what I'm hearing from other multifamily owners, and there was some data published about REITs this morning on Seeking Alpha, that collections have been good. Collections in April were 96%, which is quite good. So I still, the one thing I haven't really figured out is whether 96% is 96% of all rents due, which would be kind of like what you'd expect. You'd expect to have,
Yeah.
like that sort of like 10%. If you figure 5% vacancy and then you collect 96% of the rest, you're at 10% economic occupancy, and that's kind of like around where you're generally going to be.
Yeah.
But I don't know if, if the 96% means 96% of normal or 96% of rent that's due and owing. But still, even if it's 96% of normal,
Right.
that's still pretty good, right? I mean, that means you're somewhere around like 90% collected,
Hmm.
and that's, you're not making a lot of money, but you're also not losing money. Your property is fine and stable,
Yeah.
and things are good. So across the board, we're seeing, you know, some reassuring signs of rent collection. Now, I think what still is a mystery, certainly to me, and I think to everybody, because I just haven't seen anybody talking about, like, where is this money coming from, right?
Yeah.
Is this coming out of people's savings? Is it because there still are a lot of people still drawing salaries? All of the people who work from home, who haven't been laid off, are still collecting salary. And I guess if you have, A properties or a lot of high B properties, you've got a lot of tenants who are, working from home and still collecting salary, so things are fine. And as for the rest, are these generous unemployment benefits covering it, or have people used their stimulus money, or is it coming from savings? I don't know really what that is. So I feel like it's still, in March, everyone said, oh, March was fine, but April's going to be the month where we'll tell. Then April was good, and now everyone's saying, well, May is the month that will tell. But so far, people are telling me that May collections are decent.
Hmm.
Like you said, you're actually doing a little better than you were last month. I've heard other people say similar things.
Hmm.
So I really don't know where this is going, to be honest with you. Like, it could be that because of all the money handed out very quickly,
Yeah.
it's staved off a big crisis for multifamily owners, or maybe it didn't. Like, we just don't know yet. That's the thing. Like, we don't know if enough money was handed out, or if, what happens, right now, these extra generous unemployment benefits are supposed to expire in July, right?
Correct.
So does that mean that through July we're fine, but then into July we start seeing the impact? Or does Congress pass another huge stimulus bill and hand out more money so that people can continue to pay their rents? Like, it's just, it's too, we just don't know. We're just operating with a lot of unknowns at the moment.
Hmm.
So that's kind of
Yeah.
where
I think there's a couple of things going on. Again, right? I was very nervous. I wasn't so nervous about April because, again, people had their checks from March, so
yeah.
it kind of made sense. But I was nervous about May, and I'm on record saying, okay, May's going to be scary. So far,
Yeah, me too. Yep.
yeah.
That's what I said.
So I think there's two things that we didn't, or one thing that I counted on, and one thing that I think is a surprise. First and foremost is the unemployment benefits are working, right? The supercharged unemployment benefits are
Yep.
working, at least for the C-class operators, right? Because
Right.
a lot of them, they're making pretty, if not more than they made, they're making pretty close to what they made, and they're okay.
Yep.
But the other one I've just realized here in the last couple of days, and I realized this by looking at my own credit card, is I am spending a lot less money.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not shopping. I'm not buying the $6 lattes or, whatever.
Yep.
Just my discretionary spending is falling off a cliff. So any money I do have is just going farther. And maybe that's, maybe people are realizing they don't need to spend a lot of money.
Yeah. Or they're just, the opportunity to spend isn't there. Right. I mean, because I think even if you go on Amazon and you want to shop for stuff that's not really essential, you'll get a message saying,
yeah, it's a month.
It's a month. Yeah. It's a month before we're going to ship this. So I think a lot of people are probably saying, they can't do the impulse buying is gone. Right. So maybe, and you're right about like the $6 lattes. And I mean, look, I haven't, eaten out for 2 months, and I haven't, we've ordered a pizza a couple times. That's about it. And we're spending a lot more money on groceries spending a lot more money at the liquor store,
Sure.
but we're not spending, you know, I mean, it's funny, like I'm like, like, why is, I'm going through like a bottle of bourbon a week, right? And I'm like, I'm like spending so much money on bourbon. And then I thought, like, well, God, like if I go out and have like 3 drinks
Yeah.
at a bar, I've
Yeah.
spent that much money already, right?
Absolutely.
Basically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, I should, I'm probably still saving money because I go out to a bar
Exactly.
2 times a week and easily spend that much money. So, yeah, so people are probably spending money. They've got the money to pay for rent because they're not spending it on other stuff at the
Exactly what I'm
moment,
thinking.
right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that their discretionary, I mean, my discretionary spending has got to be down 80%.
Yeah,
And that just means for the average person who is living paycheck to paycheck, there's just more paycheck or unemployment benefits to pay rent, right? It's water,
yeah,
food, shelter. That hasn't changed, right? Water, food, shelter.
yeah,
Pretty cool.
yeah. I mean, I think one sort of risk factor that's out there though is what I've been hearing is that in the states that have opened up,
Mm.
they're where they have now. I'm sure this varies from state to state, and this is all is subject to verification. But what I understand is, at least in some states, if the state has opened up and the government has said that certain businesses can open up, if employees are asked to come back and they don't because they're scared of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
then they lose their unemployment benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that plays out too, because I think that there are going to be some people who don't want to go back to work because they're afraid of what's going to happen, or they don't trust their employers
Safety
sort
or
of
whatever.
safety measures. So
Mm-hmm.
that could impact things as well.
Yeah.
And then of course there are, like we said, how long these unemployment benefits last. I mean, I just think that we're just not going back to normal when this opens up, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
No question.
it's but we just don't know what that is going to look like yet. There are absolutely businesses, and you're probably seeing, people posting on Facebook about their favorite restaurants closing down for good.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of that. Those businesses aren't coming back, and
Well, actually, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of businesses who were barely skating by in the old model, and now in a model of social distancing where you have 25% occupancies in restaurants, and Costco has to count how many people they let in, all of this stuff for the next year. I think there's a lot of restaurants that should go out, right, declare bankruptcy, break their lease, do all of those things, and then reconstitute themselves in a new way, and maybe even in a new place. So it just feels like capitalism to me. So
yeah.
I don't
Although
know.
you have to remember though, if they do declare bankruptcy, then it's going to be very hard for them to get loans and credit when they go back into business. So
True.
I think it's going to be very tough for a lot of folks. I mean, I would like to see some kind of, like loosening up of the credit rules to account for this kind of stuff, like that sort of bankruptcy that was caused by this.
It's
right?
a special class, right? BK because of COVID or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That would be preferable. Well, let me ask you, this is a little off topic, and I know we have another topic to get to, but there, as I've been thinking about, because obviously, like, in an event like COVID, like, everybody sort of reacts, and there's no prior example, and they kind of do what they think is best, and they also act very hastily because they know that speed is important, but they also don't know exactly what the best way to do it is. And I wonder, looking back now with a little more perspective on this, what if we had just called a huge timeout for the economy, right? Instead of kind of selectively saying, okay, you get forbearance and you don't have to pay your rent over here, and all this kind of stuff, if there had been, if there, I don't even know if this is possible, but if there was some way to kind of just declare like we're just going to like call timeout on all the stuff. So if you're a property owner, like everything is suspended, you don't have to pay property taxes, you don't have to pay your mortgage,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to pay anything during like the government declares a period of time, start and end.
Yeah.
And so everybody just stops, where they are, like timeout when you're a kid in a game.
Yeah.
And would that have been better? And then just have the government send money to everybody, like not going through all this like PPP and like send it to business and they got to do this and they got to do that. Like just like the way that they've done it in Canada and some other countries. It was just like, we're just sending every individual person a check. If you were very wealthy, you're going to get it too, but you probably don't need it, but don't complain because you've got enough money to fall back on. Like, and for everyone else, this is going to like tide them over until we call time in again.
Yeah.
And so we're not worrying about any like people's credit.
Yeah.
We're not worried about like bankruptcy because all those restaurants, like they don't have to pay their rent. They don't have to pay their employees. They don't have to pay anything. Like if that would have been a better way to go about doing it. What do you think?
Yeah. So I've thought about that a lot, and basically, cause that's been talked about for a lot of our politicians have kind of put that stuff out there. So I've had to think about it. Really what you're doing there is you're trying to fix the income statement from both sides, in my opinion, right? You're trying to reduce expenses by calling a timeout on obligations. And you're trying to fix the income by throwing money on top. I believe you only have to fix one of the sides. I believe it would have been cheaper for us to just send $2,000 a month to every adult for every month that this is a national emergency and stop the PPP and do all of those things. Because you only have to fix the top of the funnel to have people stay home, right? You don't have to also fix the bottom, right, to make the net bigger. Because again, I still got to do all my capital repairs and all of those things. That money's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about not just about like multifamily though, but about all businesses. Because because I mean, like a restaurant, if they're not getting income, they don't have any money to pay anything, right? So you'd have to give them a timeout for what they owe, right?
Well, I don't know. Let's play with that a little bit, right? So every I guess the commercial operator, right? So you got a pizza joint or a clothing store that you can't service. People aren't shopping.
You can't just, because even if people get the $2,000 a month, they are not necessarily going to go spend it on food.
No, you're right.
And so like I think
maybe
so the owner would be fine personally because he could pay his own mortgage, but or whatever. But like I think you'd have to just call the timeout on the payments and just say, look, we're just going to like mortgage statement, just going to redate it.
Yeah,
we're going to redate everything by 3 months, right? And just
push
pretend as if those 3 months never happened. Like seems to me that might have been a better way to handle it.
Maybe,
And I'm also
I just wonder what the unintended consequences are, right? The other thing that is very clear, a lot of this sort of payment up, in the beginning of the stream has ripple effects, and I wonder who counts on that income stream. Is it a bond that's supposed to pay dividends to some pension, or I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Like but I think that you take care of that by, with the 2,000, per month for everybody. And I think like, I'm not particularly, my heartstrings are not being tugged at if I hear that, some like, insurance company is not getting its CMBS payments for 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not,
very true.
it's not exactly like a tragedy in my view.
No, I agree.
Especially if you're just basically saying we're just pausing and then picking up 3 months later, and you're going to get those income streams later, right? Then it's just timing, and it's like if you can figure out like the time value of money difference of a 3 month payment when they're getting like 2% on the money for 3 months, you know what I mean? It's like
it's nothing.
It's nothing. But let me ask you another question,
sure,
which is the Sweden example. Like a lot of people have brought up the Sweden example because look, they didn't shut down their economy. They just let people, they instituted some social distancing rules.
Yep.
and large gathering rules. But other than that, they let people kind of go about their business. I mean, now there's some evidence that their economy is contracted just as much as the countries that imposed lockdowns.
Hmm.
So because people didn't go out and spend money, and they self-distanced,
Yep.
they didn't want to go out,
Hmm.
even though some bars and people did go to bars and stuff, but
Yeah.
basically people didn't
Yeah.
go out. So what's your take on
Yeah, so I
Sweden?
love that Sweden did that because it's going to be evidence for us going forward. They have contracted about the same as their neighboring countries, but my suspicion is they'll rebound quicker because again they're starting the race on second base, to use a sports methodology, right? Because it's
Yeah.
all about consumer confidence, and their consumers already see people milling about, and their friends are taking selfies at bars and all that stuff. So I think if they're not on second, they're certainly on first. So my suspicion is their economy will rebound quicker. Again, I don't know, but that is certainly my opinion. I did read this morning that they are clearly over the hump. Their healthcare system held together. So it's a worthwhile experiment. They still lost 3,000 people, which is horrific. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And then you kind of take that analogy to what's going on in Brazil, which is trying to, at least unofficially doing herd mentality, and it's just falling apart there because again, I don't think their
Yeah.
healthcare system is holding together.
Yeah, they probably have a much less robust healthcare system than Sweden. Also, a much bigger country, right? I mean,
Yes.
Sweden's a small country. I think Japan will be an interesting example
Mm.
too, because they instituted lockdowns very late, and for a while they weren't. Everyone was like, "What's going on in Japan?" Because they're not locking down and they're not having a lot of infections.
Mhm.
Well, that's kind of come home to roost now. They've really had an explosion of infections, but they lock down. But the weird thing about Japan is that the government actually doesn't have any authority to like enforce its own lockdown. It's very weird. So they basically like strongly encourage people to be locked down, but they can't punish violators.
Mm.
And a lot of people have ignored it. Like there are a lot of people just still going to work
Hmm.
as normal, and they offered really like paltry benefits at first. I mean, it was crazy. My wife was telling me their first kind of like stab at some kind of COVID stimulus money was giving people like, there was like a one-time payment of, it was something crazy. It was like $1,000 or something.
Mm.
That was it. Um, and then since then they've made it more generous, but at the same time, Japan also has a very, very robust healthcare system, like
Sure.
very, very like modern, accessible, and very focused on preventative care and stuff like that. So that could also play into what the impact is
Mm-hmm.
over there later on. So it'll be interesting to see how that example plays out. Sort of like the late lockdown with strong healthcare system
Yeah.
model.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot. We just need to let this finish, right? I think following Sweden is going to be interesting because again, I think this is about total duration.
Yeah.
I think the contraction will be the same because people are scared. But if you're already kind of used to being outside and you're not penalized for walking your dog and going to the park and all of that, I'm going to
Yeah.
guess you come back faster. But we'll see in 30 to 45 days.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that we have to, which we still don't know, this is the unknown. I mean, if you look at the history of the Spanish flu,
Mm.
there was the first wave, which everybody thought was horrendous,
Yeah, it's the
turned out to be
second
very,
wave.
very small compared to the second wave.
Yeah.
And that was the wave that really impacted stuff. But the caveat to that is it was also probably larger than it would have been because of all the soldiers returning from World War One,
Mm-hmm.
who created. So apparently, they had all these parades and stuff
Yeah.
when all the soldiers came home, and then everybody got sick. So we won't have that obviously, but we may have a second wave in the fall, which could be worse. So then, so that's all leading up to this is a lead into even though it doesn't feel like it necessarily, and a lot of people sort of dismiss this idea, I think we're living in a world where we still can't quantify the risk. right? We
Right.
don't know what the risk is, and that has impacted multifamily pricing in a big
Exactly.
way.
Yeah.
And so even though the collections are still strong,
Hmm.
what multifamily investors are thinking is that yes, they're strong now, but we don't know where it's going.
Right.
And that therefore there's more risk, and therefore we need a higher risk premium,
Hmm.
which translates into higher cap rates. And what that's done is, according to yesterday's Green Street Advisors CPPI, that's their commercial property price index.
Huh.
Uh, it is commercial properties down 11%. Like, it's
Wow.
just dropped off a cliff. If you look at the trends, and I encourage everyone to go look at the Green Street Advisors site, because they have this cool index where you can actually use your cursor to track it over time and see
Mm.
the data. But they also have it, and that's for the commercial property overall, but you can download their monthly report, and it breaks it down by asset class. So overall, commercial property was down by almost 11%, but multifamily is down a little bit more,
Mm.
you know, month over month. I mean, it's just fallen off a cliff. Like, it's down 12, 13% in 1 month. And also,
Wow.
and it's down 3% year over year. We're basically back to 2015, 2016 prices
Wow.
overall for multifamily. Now, that's big, but before you go out and say, hey, that's great, we're going to get bargains, I personally thought in 2016 that multifamily was already overpriced.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're back at 2016 pricing doesn't necessarily mean that it's the time to buy. Plus, I think things are still heading downward
Mm-hmm.
because of the increased risk risk awareness, or risk concern, or risk averseness is the term I'm looking for,
Yep.
for investors. So I think that we're still in the catch a falling knife
Oh, for sure.
period. The bottom isn't in yet. You still have to wait and see. And unless you're getting a deal where you're looking at this and it's like, hey, I'm getting a 30% discount off of 2020 pricing or more, like at 30%, I might feel like, hey, I think I'm reasonably well protected,
Mm-hmm.
because generally, multifamily gives back about 30% off the peak
Right.
during a correction.
Mm-hmm.
So that I'd feel okay at that going forward, but at 10%, not yet.
Yeah.
Not enough of a discount yet.
Just real quick, Green Street Advisors, is that just greenstreetadvisors.com?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, if you type in, if you have auto suggest,
Yeah. Okay.
or you can just type in, if you type in Green Street Advisors CPPI, it'll pop up for sure.
Okay. I will check that out. I like how we got to the pricing here, because one of the guys that I follow, right, there's two guys that if there's a headline article or video on them, I read. One is Warren Buffett, just because he's Buffett. And the other is Sam Zell.
Yeah.
So Sam Zell was on Bloomberg, I want to say Monday, and he had a 30-minute interview. And really the big takeaway for me there is, in the multifamily space, he's sitting tight because he just doesn't know what's going on, and it's been so short. But he really pointed out the fact there's been no price discovery, right? Yeah. He almost said verbatim what I've been saying for a while, is sellers remember yesterday and buyers want tomorrow. And we're kind of in that little gap. So it's interesting. I wonder what is Green Street Advisors. I don't know how this CPPI works. Is it actually tracking sales, or is it cap rates, or do you know what kind of makes it up? Because it's interesting that it's down 11% already.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure. If you go to their site, they tell you how it's composed, but I'm not sure exactly what they're tracking. I mean, I'm assuming that they probably are using all of the data services and tracking sales in there, and maybe they have their own ability to collect data as well. Yeah. But yeah, I'm assuming it's based on that. And they have, they weight these things a certain way too.
Sure.
So that affects how the index is composed. One thing that you can do that's interesting though is if you go to their webpage, if you go to the place where you can download their monthly report,
Mhm.
You can also download an Excel spreadsheet of all of the data, and so you can actually see month by month how the index has changed.
Yeah.
And then further, what they do there, which they don't do on their report, but they do it in this Excel spreadsheet, is that they've got the overall index, which includes, self-storage and, mobile homes and healthcare and other kind of more minor uh, areas. They also have just they have what they call the core
Mm,
index, which is it's apartments, office, retail, and industrial, I think. And so
probably. Yeah.
you can see how that changes as well. And that's actually a little more affected
Hmm.
than
Okay.
um, than the overall index. So it just, go look at that data too. It's sort of fun to play around with if you're a
Yeah.
if you're a data head.
Oh, I am. I will be looking at that. And again, to see that multifamily is even down a little bit more than that, to me, just tells me how overpriced multifamily got.
Yeah.
That's what that tells me. Is it was a blow off rally, to use a stock market term. Too many people chasing too few assets, and it got stupid. I mean, the last year was just stupid.
Well, yeah, it really was. And if you look at that index, the thing that you see that's interesting is that the market had a strong, steady run up till 2016, and then it really flattened after that. And prices were going up, but they really were able to go up only because cap rates couldn't compress any further.
Uh-huh.
And they really were only able to go up by the amount of NOI growth that people were having multiplied by the cap rate, right? So you see kind of, it's going up a little bit over the year until last year.
Yeah.
And last year, there's another big spike in prices. And I think it was that, that euphoria that happened when everybody decided, hey, we're not going to have a recession after all.
Yep.
And they just, and then, but at the same time, the Fed lowered rates, right? And it's kind of like, so people were like, yay, we're going to buy more multifamily because there's no recession and cheaper money. And now, so if that probably explains why I was able to sell my properties for so much money last year, because because people were just like in a feeding frenzy for multifamily.
It was very, I mean, I lived through the '06 run up in single family homes. It was the same feeling. It's why I sold. It's like, why is everybody talking about this? And what really got me is people were basically saying, you can't go wrong. It's a sure thing. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I've owned this stuff and it gets nasty.
Well, that's why you were hearing that, I wrote about this the other day. When I got into the business, you never heard a soul saying multifamily does well in recession.
Yeah.
Because we just had a recession and everybody knew what happened, right? Yeah. They saw the foreclosures of multifamily properties, right? It was not, I went, it's crazy. Like when I was trying to buy properties in South Carolina and tried to get finance from local banks, they were telling me, we won't lend you money as an out-of-stater unless you do something like buy a condo here, because we just took back all these properties from these out-of-state guys, and we don't want to repeat that mistake. And so the idea that like multifamily does well in recessions only really started, becoming widely discussed when we kind of started getting peak pricing around 2016, 2017. Yeah. And everybody started worrying about a recession. And then it was sort of like no, it's okay to keep going because multifamily does fine in a recession. And look, like, I think to Sam Zell's point, because of all this stimulus money, we don't have price discovery. Yeah. We're in this situation where, the reason people thought that multifamily did well in a recession last time was because of what happened in the foreclosure crisis, which happened after the recession, right?
Yes.
That peaked in 2010, 2011. We were out of the recession, the growth was happening, but it still felt crappy. But but we were not in a recession anymore at that point. We had growth. And so then all those people got foreclosed on. But that was a one-time event that was caused by, what happened during the bubble and people not renting, and like 5% of the population that would have normally rented bought homes, and then that 5%
they came back,
went right back, right?
Exactly.
So, but people point to that and say, "Oh, look, it does well in a recession."
No.
So basically, if you're depending on that, you're basically saying, "Oh, well, we need another foreclosure crisis for this to be correct."
Yeah.
Now, I think what's going to happen is we're going to have another event where the government pumped, $2 trillion or whatever it was into the economy, and that saved multifamily's ass. And then people are going to go and say, see, look, we had a recession and multifamily was fine. And now, but the lesson now they're going to say, okay, so now what we need is, we're going to assume now that in every recession going forward that the government's going to bail us out again.
Yeah.
And like, I hope to God that's not true, because we can't, like, really, like, every time the business cycle turns, the government's going to come and like, and support everybody. Like, then we have no price discovery. We have no, the market is not functioning anymore.
Yeah.
We can't make any informed decisions about anything if that happens. I think it would be absolutely nuts for, outside of like this crazy situation where the government has said, okay, everybody stay home, you can't do business.
Exactly.
But we're going to give you money to make up for it. Like, if it's just like, hey, the business cycle has run its course, and we have creative destruction and all that kind of stuff, and the government's just saying, no, none of that creative destruction stuff. we're just gonna give you guys all a check to prevent it from happening. I mean, they have been doing that with cheap money for a long time.
Yeah.
With all the zombie companies, but who are existing on cheap credit.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, I don't know. Like I said before, if that happens, I'm just out. I got to find something else to go.
I agree.
Spend my time on. That's
Yeah,
the way the world works.
No, I certainly don't want it to go that direction. The business cycle is healing. It washes out at bad actors. It needs to stick around. This is going to hopefully be a once in 100-year event. Again, the government told us to stay home. So when that happens, you got to fix the income statement and, help the people that aren't earning any money. So yeah, we will see. It'll be interesting to watch. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up this week's discussion?
Yeah. I mean, the closing thought is just that, there's good news out there, but that's going to run the surface, and below the surface is the underlying reality is that we just don't know where we are. So totally so continue to be cautious. Don't be don't overweight the good news right now, because I think that would be a mistake. Yeah.
I love it. We will end it on that, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I love it. See you next week.